Welcome back to Movie Rewind. Today I will tell you about a drama, romance, sci-fi movie from 2021 titled Swan Song. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. In the near future, where technology has advanced to entirely new levels, Cameron Turner is a devoted father and family man. He recently received a terminal illness diagnosis, which is why he started looking into cloning technology. Cameron has been visiting the Dr. Scott-run facility to leave DNA samples and prepare his clone, but he is still undecided on the matter. The facility makes a perfect copy of you and also implants your memories so that the clone is ready to take your place in life whenever the time comes. After another memory session, Cameron receives a message from Dr. Scott, telling him to make a decision soon because his most recent scans reveal an accelerating decline. For the time being, Cameron chooses to ignore it and goes inside his home, where he greets his dog and checks on his wife, Poppy, and son, Corey, before going to the bathroom and experiencing a seizure. He closes the door so his wife can't see him deal with his illness alone since she is unaware that Cameron is sick. The following day, Cameron meets Dr. Scott to tour her facility's living quarters, where patients are allowed to stay until they pass away after a clone has been sent to take their place. She introduces him to Dalton, who works as a psychologist and the main technician in the control room. The rest of the work is done around the house by AI. Cameron must sign a contract stipulating that the clone will never be awakened if he changes his mind. Then, before he is allowed into the room where his clone is sleeping, Dalton requests that Cameron turn off the cameras on his contacts and his watch. The clone, whom Dr. Scott is referring to as Jack, out of convenience, is still an empty vessel, so the term sleeping isn't quite accurate. Cameron observes the clone from a distance, hesitant to approach it without consulting the doctor. He finds the experience so unsettling that he backs out of the procedure completely. Cameron then returns home and carries on with his daily activities. He despises his design job but stays employed to support his wife and son, both of whom he adores. Art, however, is Cameron's true passion. He remembers a conversation he had one afternoon with Poppy and her twin, Andre, discussing the clones. Cameron recalls his wife saying she would not mind them at all, so long as she could not tell the difference. This motivates Cameron to reconvene with Dr. Scott, who assures him that all clones will have the portion of their memories associated with the facility erased, making them unaware that they are copies. She goes into detail about the last clone they sent, and how Cameron may meet her to help address his concerns. Cameron visits the clone's workplace and poses as a customer in order to interact with the clerk, who goes by the name Kate. The conversation is completely normal, and neither Cameron nor Kate's daughter, who is also present and makes no indications that she is aware that this is not her real mother, can tell that Kate is a clone. When Cameron gets home, he realizes he'll never meet their unborn baby and can't help crying when his wife reminds him they will become parents again in 7 months. For a brief moment, he considers telling her the truth, but he can't find the words and changes his mind. Instead, he says that he's just anxious about being a dad once more. Cameron then calls Dr. Scott and says that he is back in for the cloning procedure. When Cameron visits the facility again, he runs into Kate and tells her about his experience meeting her clone. They go for a walk together and discover they share the same oncologist as the patient who came before them. Cameron notes that he observed her daughter having a great time, unaware that anything had changed. Then, he calls Poppy to let her know he has a special assignment that requires him to be away for 1 week. After changing into fresh clothing provided by the facility, Cameron is put to sleep for 6 hours so that Jack can retrieve his memories. Following the procedure, the next step is to verify that their minds are synchronized, which requires Cameron to vividly recall some of his most significant memories, including meeting Poppy, having their first child, and Andre's passing. After several rounds of synchronization, it's finally time to wake Jack. To give them some time to adjust, they separate the clone and the original into separate rooms. Dr. Scott informs Jack that the only distinguishing feature between the two is a freckle on the palm of his hand, which was strategically placed in case he needed assistance remembering which one he is. While playing online video games with Corey one night, Cameron, who spends the evenings calling his family, suffers a seizure. The following day, he takes another walk with Kate, at which time he expresses his fear of passing away at any moment without saying goodbye to his family. Later, it is finally time for him to meet Jack properly, and he finds Jack talking perfectly, describing his relationship with Poppy to Dr. Scott. Before Jack admits how anxious he is about the whole situation, the two men stand there looking at each other for a while. Cameron is asked to observe as Dr. Scott questions Jack to verify his memories because he still cannot completely grasp what has occurred. Cameron is astounded to discover that Jack not only has a perfect memory, but he also feels the same way about those memories as Cameron does. After a brief conversation with Kate, whose condition is deteriorating daily, Dr. Scott resumes her questioning of Jack in the presence of Cameron. Jack is so good at explaining what Cameron has been feeling and ignoring that at some point Cameron loses all sense of self and begins responding to the questions as well. Jack talks about the difficult times he went through when Poppy lost Andre and the dreams he keeps experiencing. They call Poppy after sharing a meal and exhibiting almost identical eating patterns. Although Jack is the only one speaking to her, Cameron is permitted to observe. Cameron ends the call before deciding he does not like any of this because he finds it upsetting to see what is technically another man being so accepted by his wife without even mentioning the difference. Jack and Cameron begin to argue and even push each other because they cannot agree on what to do next. Cameron only decides to leave when he begins to feel ill and decides he wants to return home and cancel the clone switch. Later, the two men discuss their concerns about Poppy finding out about their predicament. However, no amount of discussion could convince Cameron to reconsider his decision to visit his family, despite his ill health at the time. They install cameras on Cameron's contact lenses before he departs so that Jack can look into his family life and gain some insight. But before Cameron even reaches his front door, he starts to experience a seizure in the middle of the street, briefly losing consciousness. Cameron does not want to be picked up by a car and driven back to the facility, but he has no choice but to accept unless he wants to pass away right in front of his loved ones. Cameron passes out once more on the way back, and Dr. Scott gives him some powerful medication to put him to sleep while instructing Dalton to send Jack in the morning because he is prepared to take Cameron's place. Dr. Scott gives Jack all of Cameron's clothing and accessories and informs him that the next 2 weeks with the family will be a trial period. If everything goes according to plan, he will return to the facility to have his memories of the cloning process completely erased. Additionally, he will also need to wear contact lenses fitted with cameras so that the doctors can keep an eye on his development. When Jack gets to the house, everything runs like clockwork. His memories are perfect for him to be able to communicate with Poppy and Corey without any problems, and they are unable to tell the difference through normal conversation. The dog doesn't recognize him and constantly barks at him, which is the only issue he runs into. After being unconscious for 24 hours, Cameron awakens and freaks out when he learns that Jack has already been sent because Cameron wasn't finished saying goodbye to his family. Dr. Scott then gives Cameron a harsh reality check by reminding him that he is quickly dying. After that, Cameron spends the majority of his time watching Jack's videos, stopping only to join Kate when she can no longer leave her bed. Her ashes are scattered in the lake after she passes away. Dr. Scott explains that Jack is removing his contacts more frequently than just before bed to give the family some semblance of privacy, but Cameron starts to worry about possible ulterior motives. Cameron decides enough is enough after having a nightmare about Jack abusing Corey. He steals an old watch they did not give Jack because it is broken, and then sneaks out of the facility in the middle of the night using the watch to launch a boat that will take him back to the mainland. A few hours later, he arrives at the house. The first room he sees is his office, where he finds all the artwork Jack has been producing and the perfectly normal conversations he has been having with Poppy. However, the noise he makes awakens Jack, who comes over and exhibits a great deal of tolerance for his presence. He feels sorry for him and lets him spend one last night with his family, so they switch clothes, scaring the dog when he sees the two men together. Corey is awakened by Cameron, who takes him to the kitchen and teaches him how to eat edamame, Poppy's preferred beer snack, while Jack hides in the closet. After putting his son back to bed and holding him tearfully, Cameron joins Poppy in their bedroom. She consoles him when she notices that he is depressed, and they both agree to name their unborn child Andre in honor of her brother before Cameron holds her as tightly as possible. Once Poppy is asleep, Cameron leaves the room and changes back into Jack's clothes. He shakes Jack's hand and thanks him before heading back to the facility. Thereafter, Cameron spends his time drawing, or discussing the clone experience with potential new clients. After the 2 weeks have lapsed, Cameron is relieved to learn that Jack's memories of the facility have been erased and that he is now entirely Cameron. But before he had his memory erased, Jack made a special final video for Cameron in which he asked Poppy to profess her love for him while he watches with tears streaming down his face. Okay guys, thank you for watching. Please leave a like on the video, and subscribe to see more.